Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our second edition of Carnegie Cast. This is a weekly discussion regarding the Dale Carnegie principles and some themes on how we can reduce stress and worry and continue to connect with others, especially during turbulent times like this. Today, you'll see that we have a little bit of a different dynamic. Jay will typically be our host. He's a natural with things like this, but I will be conducting the interview so that we can hear from him as one of our business leaders in the community. Jay, do you want to say hello and where are you coming from today?
Yeah, hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm coming from Vail, Colorado. This is actually the site of where I got married. So in honor of my wife's birthday, which was yesterday, we're bringing you to Vail, Colorado. So,
beautiful.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
our
the
vacation
same
spot.
brick background as usual.
Yeah, we need to start getting you on vacation.
Exciting. But we'll continue to travel around the world with Jay on a weekly basis.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Awesome. Well, today we're first going to start with just learning a little bit more about Jay, and then we'll set up our topic for the day. And the theme for the day that we'll talk about is how we can try honestly to see things from other people's points of view and their perspectives. That's Dale Carnegie principle number 17, and why that particular principle is a benefit for us to practice, particularly in times of stress and worry, and when we're navigating a lot of change, which we are.
Yeah.
So Jay, talk to us a little bit about your life's work and maybe tell us something that people wouldn't typically know about you.
Yeah, well, thank you. So my life's work, I grew up small town, North Dakota, go Hornets in Harvey, actually with one of our coworkers, Katie Munyon. Went to North Dakota State. Soon after college, got my first job. 2 months in, they laid off the entire company. So that was a little bit wild.
Wow.
I kind of ran around the country and applied for jobs and had some really cool experiences. Was a recruiter for a couple of years, got super bored because I was on the phone all day, sitting at a desk, and I was also coaching track and field at the time. So that'd be a great idea to become a track and field coach. And then after that, thought, hey, you can teach business to high school kids. So went back to school in the evenings and weekends and became an educator. Applied for every job in the country. It was 162 jobs that was open.
162 jobs. Let me just pause and think about that for a minute. So you took the time to send in 162 resumes, right? 162 different applications.
Yeah, like, yeah, I kind of figured out a
system
system though. So what I did was I saved all of the questions on a Word document, and after about the 10th application, a lot of them started lining up. So now just copy paste and change like the values and do a little bit of research. But it was about 3 months of applying for jobs, which was brutal.
So then what happened? So, yeah. You applied for 162 jobs, and where'd you land?
For 162 jobs, and then I ended up calling one of my buddies who I hadn't talked to in like 4 years, lived in Colorado Springs, and I'd been down there for spring break one year. And just said, hey, do you still work at this Falcon High School? He said, yeah. And I was like, well, great. I'm the teacher. There's a job opening. Can you put my name in? And he was like, what are you talking about? So anyways, he talks to the principal and they filled it. 2 months later, they called me back and said, hey, we got this part-time job. We'd love to interview you. So I interviewed they called Thursday. I interviewed Friday, did my second interview Monday. And the job was supposed to start on Thursday. And I'm living in Minneapolis. And I was like, hey, here's the deal. Like, I need to let my athletes know if I'm moving, and I got to get packed up. And I still have like a 10-page paper to write a test to take to finish my And so they said, listen, we can't, tell you for sure, but we'd like to hire you. So I cleaned my apartment, packed everything up. The next day I got the official call. So I drove to Fargo, called my parents, was like, hey, I'm moving to Colorado. They're like, yeah, great. When? I was like, well, today. So I'm going to pick some stuff up and, see you at a relative's wedding. So I taught and coached for 6 years. My my habits tell me that you'll behave your way in and out of jobs and relationships. And that was my goal. And I told the principal that I'm not worried about part-time. I said, hey, I'll behave my way into a full-time job. I'm pretty confident. And loved it. I love teaching and coaching and just after 6 years, it was time to be done, and became a realtor, investor, kind of a small business consultant. And then I started talking with Tanya and Tamara, the former owners, and I knew nothing about Dale Carnegie. I'd not read the book, had never taken a course. And halfway through the second course, or the second day of the course, was like, this is every high school teacher, student, business owner needs to take this class. Mm-hmm. And I called them up and said, hey, if you guys are still willing to do this thing, so am I. And, here we are about 2 years later.
Here we are. So one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Jay, is your ability to navigate a lot of rapid change. And just your story and what you just told us is a testament to that, because you've made really quick decisions based on, I would imagine, your gut instinct and wanting to just, why not, right? Let me go explore this new area of life and my talents and push and challenge myself. And a part of that was purchasing Dale Carnegie. What would you say about that? How have you become somebody that so, can easily adapt to change, that can just take on new challenges, that's willing to take risks in your life over and over and over again?
I think it comes back to that first time I was let go 2 months into my first ever career. I just, like 2 days prior, rented this $800 a month apartment. It was the best pay I've ever had working for that company right out of college. And then about 3 days later, they're like, oh, hey, by the way, we're letting you go. And I thought I was the only one getting let go. And I found out later that afternoon that they let 100 people go. But, I felt sorry for myself for a night, probably drank a little too much vodka, and then woke up, went for a 10-mile run, and came back and was like, all right, well, solve the problem, find a job. And so I think going through that has always allowed me to take a leap of faith. But then also, I think there's a big part of this of making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people. Like never in my mind have I thought that I'm going to fail and we're going to make mistakes, we're going to learn. And I think that goes back to the people that we surround ourselves with. So as long as you're continuing to do that, I think that's always helped me to navigate change fast, and be successful at it. Maybe not in the timeline that we think it should be, but typically at the end of the day or at the end of the adventure, it comes out positive.
So you talk about surrounding yourself with the right people. And one commonality that I'm hearing and what I know of you is that everything that you've followed in life, those different risks that you've taken to move across the country and start over and do something new, is people have been involved in every single aspect of your career. Whether you're a teacher, you're a coach, you are leading Dale Carnegie, or you're facilitating Dale Carnegie programs, you're there on the other side of things, really being that person for people. So what types of people would you recommend that others surround themselves with? Who are the people in your life? Or what are some of the characteristics and qualities that you've looked for to keep some of those talents of yours really strong?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I look for people to surround myself with, one, it's someone that I admire for a specific reason. Great example, I've got a buddy in Austin, Texas. He's a retired Air Force. And what I love about him is his colors. He told me this last night. He said, my colors don't bleed. My compass does not weigh from true north. And my value system does not stop. So to surround yourselves with those type of people, that it doesn't matter what adversity hits them in the eye, how much money they may lose throughout this coronavirus thing, they're going to do the right thing for the right reason, for the right value system. So that would be one. Another one is, I look for people with grit. I want to surround myself with people who are willing to stand up in times like this and say, all right, let's roll, let's solve the problem. Because that's a gift that I think we've lost in the last, 5 to 7 years. And then the other one is people who are strong in their faith and strong in their family. I think one of the most important things that drive us through any type of decision or groups that we can spend more time with, or happiness, in my opinion, is the family that we have. And family doesn't necessarily mean blood. I have a lot of people that I consider family that are good college buddies. And then the faith in which they go through it. I think in times like this, that is a big piece of how people manage.
Yeah, no,
Mhm,
absolutely. And that's, I can see that in you.
mhm,
Something that I also appreciate is just your humility. And I've noticed that, the topic for the day, trying honestly to see something from another person's point of view, is something that you practice frequently, especially as we've navigated this change. I've seen you really try to put yourself in different people's situations to talk through really the things that we have to be grateful for as a
mhm,
result of that. And even as we've made really difficult, rapid decisions because the situation has
mhm.
required that of us, you've been good about taking a step back and practicing that. So, what are some ways that you've leveraged Dale Carnegie's principle number 17 throughout this situation? What have you seen some of the challenges for you in doing that or barriers, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges I've had is not understanding why people don't see it from our point of view,
Mm,
or people who aren't practicing that enough. To me, maybe it goes back to that grit piece of, when I was a kid, I remember my grandpa always saying, it's not a good decision unless it's the best decision for everybody. Right. So, and I think that kind of puts us into some words of trying honestly to see things from other people's point of view. So, you know, we're doing everything we can to help out a small business, right? We're doing everything we can to make sure that the community in the state of North Dakota is thriving. Um, and I love that about where we live and how we live. And part of that, the challenge I think that you and I are facing as business owners in this is a lot of times people don't see Dale Carnegie as a small business. They
mm,
see us as a franchise, kind of like some McDonald's out there, but understand that someone locally probably owns those things.
yeah.
So I think that's been a challenge to overcome as of recent. And then, for me, in my perspective, it's how do we handle different emotions? Understanding that we're going to make some pretty tough decisions
Hmm.
that are going to hurt, and they're going to hurt us because we truly care about people, we care about our community. But trying to sit down and put yourself in the other person's shoes and knowing that, you know, some people are going to get laid off in different organizations. Some people are going to get furloughed. Some people, may have no clue how they're going to pay for food, for rent, and are just scratching at the claws. So trying to understand what that's like, because I've been there before, and understand how scary that is,
Hmm.
has really helped during these times as well.
Yeah, and I would imagine just being able to showcase empathy in those situations
Mhm.
because you've taken the time to think through what that individual business, whatever the case may be, their situation could be like. You may approach that
Mhm.
conversation very differently had you not practiced that principle.
Yeah, it's such a challenge, because everyone, we're kind of in this crisis mode of show empathy, do the right thing. And this is where value systems, the stronger you are to your value system, the better the outcome's going to be. It might not be 6 months from now, but it will be 2 years from
Yeah.
now. And I think the more we can really put ourselves in someone else's shoes, try to see things from their point of view, quite frankly, the better off we're going to be because, we understand everyone's struggling. We
Mhm.
do. We understand that. We see that. And we're trying to do the best we can to help, and we're trying to make the best decision for us and our community and our employees. Um, and sometimes that's a challenge, but if we do it with integrity and for the right purpose, and we talk about it, and they know that we're seeing it from their point of view, at the end of the day, we're all going to be okay. But
Mhm.
not everybody does that.
Yeah, that's a good reminder for all of us because it also helps strengthen our connections to people when we do
Hmm.
that. And it becomes more selfless when we have the
Yeah.
opportunity to process things first before we're going into a conversation or even
Mhm.
in that conversation, knowing that many of those dialogues are difficult right now. They're hard, they're
Yeah.
emotional. We're taking the time to really step back and remain connected to someone else and to see them as human and to treat them as human, which can be
Yeah.
more challenging when we're in a virtual environment like we are now. So,
Hmm.
one of the things that's unique about our small business, and I appreciate that you pointed out that we are a locally owned small business, and I think sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because people see Dale Carnegie obviously as a global organization, and we are, each office is locally owned and operated, which makes us pretty unique because we have a lot of creativity and innovation with how we deliver our solutions and
Mm-hmm.
facilitate them in our community. And then the way that our organization works and our structure is pretty unique to us. So you and I are both, we're business partners. When you bought the company, that wasn't necessarily your initial plan. And along the way, I would imagine that you've had to practice Principle 17 very frequently,
Mm-hmm.
even today, as your role has really shifted, where you're still very much involved, but you've put me in a position where I would imagine you have to practice a lot of trust and try to see things from my perspective frequently. So talk a little bit
Yes.
about the uniqueness of our structure and what has it been like to continue trust and practicing our principles in a time of uncertainty.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a question that I get asked often because, a lot of people are kind of like, so what are you actually doing? After we made you president, like, well, listen, we're still involved. It's really not that much different. I think a lot of it goes back to, I was given an opportunity a number of years ago to do the thing that I think I'm probably the greatest at in my own life, and I'll say this to the day I die, that I'll never have any more fun doing this, was coaching high school track and field. Right? I mean, we've talked about, I can see your eyes light up when you do it, and
Yeah.
I do. I'm magnetized towards how young men and women can become better people for their communities, right? And that's through coaching track. So seeing your energy the same way that I felt about that made that decision pretty simple. Because as I said last week, like you look at you and you wake up and it's Dale Carnegie, you go to bed, it's Dale Carnegie, you have dreams about it. So for me, it was easier to trust just knowing that, someone had given me that opportunity as well, and something that I think I probably loved more than anyone that was surrounding me at the time. But it's a challenge to trust because, you come in, you had this big vision, things didn't go the way we wanted them to, but it's also a time to look and say, once again, if I see things from other people's point of view and not necessarily a single person, but an entire, community or team, or what is truly best for the organization as a whole, that's a whole nother way to look at it and say, okay, do the right thing, right? This is the right person to lead our team, and then trust that person has the skill set to do it, and you chose, or that happened for a purpose. Because there was a lot of conversations you and I had. There was trust on your end too that had to come back to me, like, this just wasn't like, hey, Bethany, take this and go. It was kind of like, oh, do I trust this guy yet? I don't know. We didn't know each other that well.
That's true.
So I think there's that flip side of it too, when you're looking at it saying, how do we trust? And, one of the things that I think was worked really well for you and I is our value systems are so lined up. Like when I talked about how do we surround ourselves with the right people, to me, that made it easier, and it makes it easier to trust that we're doing the right thing and that you're leading the company in the right way. And that, we all have your back in doing that. That makes it easier. There's still challenges like this, I think, has been trying on everybody. But as you and I talked about, it's like, oh, we're actually pretty confident. We're in a good spot. So I think that's where I would look at it in terms of, it's been a different process. It's been challenging at times. But when you see a spark in somebody else that is that strong, I think it's easier. Like, oh, well, they're born to do this, right? And it's sometimes a tough pill to swallow, but at the end of the day, if you go back to seeing it from their point of view, why would you hold someone back from being the best possible version of themselves?
That's really powerful.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So much of what you do in all areas of your life, right? And people may not realize this about you, Jay, but you wear many hats. Today you're wearing your Dale Carnegie hat, but that's truly one of many. I know those are awesome. because you're really active in our community in different ways, but you're also an investor of different companies and things that you're really passionate about. And so you've really followed that and taken that pretty seriously in your life of allowing others to maximize their strengths, seeing that spark in other people, but also continuing to find that within yourself, which I believe requires a lot of humility. And many people wouldn't be able to see that or those opportunities because of our own ego that can often get in the way. So what's the one thing you would want people to know based on your experience, everything we've talked about so far, because there's been a lot, but that one thing, maybe as it relates to just how do we continue to see things from someone else's point of view? How can we work past that challenge of not letting our egos get in the way of the best possible outcome? I think both of those things go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing I would love everyone to take away is, trying to find the greatness in others, right? So if we see, whether it's a teammate of yours, a potential new manager, someone who's struggling, someone who's doing really well, what is it, the thing that they're the most passionate and excited about, and how do we align their skill set with that?
How do you know? How do you find out? I'll pause because I think that's an important, you just mentioned, okay, we need to make sure that we're focusing on that, but how do you know? How are you discovering that about people in your life?
Well, I think you just got to be curious. That's one way is, you got to be curious and you got to be honest. Let's go back to your and I situation. If you didn't ask me a lot of hard questions, we probably wouldn't have got to know each other that quickly. So if you weren't curious about me and what my plan was, we probably wouldn't have got to this that fast. And likewise, if we didn't have those hard, honest conversations, and sometimes really fun, good, honest conversations, we never would have got to this point either.
Yeah.
And then I think the second part of that is, I wouldn't say instinctive, but it's just trusting that you can see the spark in somebody else. So we look at, we'll take you, for example, again. I think anyone who's been to any Dale Carnegie thing, whatever we're doing, they can see like, okay, Bethany loves, eats, breathes, and sleeps Dale Carnegie. You go talk to, my buddy Pat Thiel. He's studying to become a principal. He loves music and sports and coaching high school football almost more than anybody else I've ever met. And you can see it within 3 minutes of talking to him. You go talk with some of my buddies from Colorado. They love coaching soccer more than anything else in the world, or love leading an HVAC company. There's a lot of people that like HVAC and plumbing. I do not. I don't think it would be very exciting at all. But they'll talk to you for like 10 hours about it and you'll say 3 words.
Yeah.
So it's just being able to see that extra spark and asking questions. If you don't get to know people, you'll never see what their true self.
So it sounds like it's really a combination of a couple of things. So one, it's our responsibility to listen and to truly see other people, which goes back to principle number 17, right? And also humility, because it's not about us in that moment, it's about them, and keeping our eyes and ears open to witnessing their spark, because we can tell, like you talked about lighting up, when we light up, when we talk about certain things, and to spend more time on those topics and really have the courage then to ask questions to get to know someone on a deeper level. And that's something that I've appreciated about you. And it also seems like it's a theme in your life related to your passion for people and allowing others to maximize their strengths, and for you being that catalyst that sometimes allows them to do that even more effectively. But you talked about, so going back to that one key takeaway, which is just seeing the greatness in others and trusting that. Say a little bit more about that one thing you want us to take away from our Carnegie Cast second segment.
Yeah, so we're seeing the greatness in others, we're finding the greatness in others, and in this time in particular, not necessarily trying to figure out exactly what everyone else is going through, but giving them grace to live what their new normal is. Some people have been through some pretty terrific things in life, and some people have been through some pretty horrific things in life. So this may be the most challenging aspect of a lot of people in our community's lives. For some people, it's just another challenge. So giving grace and putting yourself in their shoes to understand that we don't know what this new normal is, and people are going to handle it way differently. To
Yeah.
just live with grace during this time and allow people to adjust, and and allow them to live, and allow them to figure it out,
Mhm.
and then help coach when you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And keeping, it sounds like, that empathy top of mind as well, and humility along the way.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's we all experienced things in a different way. Our many experiences in life shape how we perceive different challenges that we're going through. And it's a really good reminder, even for me, to think about um, the way this might be impacting people around me differently than myself, or for you, because we are all so unique in how we handle adversity. So next week, do you want to talk a little bit about, because you're going to be back in your natural role, which is interviewing, and I know that we'll have an opportunity to hear from our Vice President of Training, Katie Munyon,
Mhm.
on creating happiness for others and filling our thoughts with peace and hope and happiness in order
Yeah.
to do that the most effectively. So say a little bit more. What can people expect for next week?
Yeah, when we're looking at this, if you're not following Katie yet on social media, I would highly recommend it. She's posting some pretty funny things. It could be some memes. Sometimes they're inspirational. Sometimes they're a story. But we're really going to dive into one of Katie's good strengths. One of her greatest strengths is, she does the best she can to find peace within herself. I think that's so important right now for us to understand.
Mhm.
And then on the flip side of that is, it is a great time to start creating happiness for other people. Uh, and what a unique world that we're living in, and a unique opportunity that we have to create happiness, whether it's individual, or small business, or even large business right now. Like we're in this really weird pandemic time together. So let's create happiness for our communities and our states and our country, and quite frankly, the entire world. And we're going to dive a little bit into how can we do that. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about it next week. It'll be fun.
Awesome. I am too. And the last thing, Jay, how can people stay in touch with you? I know you're on social. What are some of the
Yep.
ways that people can follow you, know what you're up to, and stay connected?
Yeah, most of my social media accounts, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, it's at JAY. So my first name, and then just my last name, which is Peltier. P as in Paul, E-L, T as in Tom, I-E-R. Or if you're watching this, it's just at my name on the bottom of my screen
There
right
you
there.
go.
So yeah, that's
Awesome.
probably the best way to follow me. And then also on LinkedIn. So you search it, you'll probably be able to find it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking time to be in the other seat this time
Yeah.
around so that people can hear from you as well. I always learn something new every time that you and I have a discussion, and always appreciate your perspective and the way that you go about living life and impacting people. So thank you for being in the hot seat, if you will, this week. And
Yeah.
thank you everyone for taking the time to listen in for our second Carnegie Cast.
Thanks, everybody.